Hello, friends. I'm Jem Fadling, and you're listening to the Unhurried Living Podcast, where we inspire you to rest deeper, live fuller, and lead better. Formational questions are an important part of our spiritual growth. Rather than striving for quick answers, it's okay and even good to learn to ask slower and more transformational questions. Yes, it takes some creativity and patience, but this is a beautiful way of cooperating with God as He brings about maturity in your own life. Today I'm talking with our Unhurried Living team member, Brenda Renderos. In fact, she's the one guiding our conversation about asking and praying formational questions. We'll take a moment to define this type of question. We'll give examples of questions we've been asked that led to some important insights. And we'll encourage you on how you can learn to formulate your own questions that can become prayers that you hold in your heart with God. As a side note, the conversation you're about to hear was originally recorded for a group of women, so you'll often hear us referring to our listeners as ladies. And rest assured, this conversation is important for men as well. I'm sure we can all grow in our ability to ask soulful questions and to journey with God within them. And here's a little bit about Brenda. Brenda Renderos is a transformation life coach, and she holds a BA in Christian Studies. She has served and has been employed in various areas of ministry in leadership, soul care, speaking, and teaching, as well as guiding interns exploring vocational ministry. Brenda has led spiritual retreats, provided soul care workshops, and has trained small group and global outreach leaders. Her life mission is to partner with people finding greater balance in life and holistic health. Enjoy my conversation with Brenda.
We are officially into a new year, and with that often comes new goals and resolutions, and those are all wonderful. But here's the thing, change without purpose won't take us to those deeper places, and change with misguided purpose can take us to the wrong places. So what if we just took a step back? Now, hear me out. We're not saying to throw out your goals or resolutions. That's totally okay. We're just wondering, what if we pause to ask some questions that would help us to take our spiritual pulse and lead to a deeper awareness of God's invitation for this next season? And then we can look at our goals and resolutions to see how they align. So that's what we want to be able to do today. So, Jem, between us, including Larissa, we are formational coaches and we're spiritual directors, and we've been trained in asking formational questions. So how would you define what a spiritual formational question looks like?
Well, Brenda, this conversation is really important to me. As a spiritual director, a soul care coach, and even as an author, I care a lot about words. I care a lot about the formation of words. How do we put them together so that we can be people who are responsive to God? That's sort of one of my heartbeats. How would we say things in a way that help people grow and change? So formational questions, I think, are central. And I'm even sort of hypersensitive to it at this point, because when I hear a question that is asked that isn't formational, I almost bristle. Because it sounds a little tinny to my ear at this point. Because, again, I've been a spiritual director now. I received my training 17, 18 years ago. So I've been living with the paradigm of spiritual direction for many years.
Yeah.
And so I care deeply about this. So preface. But what I thought what I would do, since you asked me what a spiritual formation question looks like, I think it looks like many of the things I've already said. It's invitational in tone. There's grace. There's a gracious tone.
Yeah.
It's open-ended. It doesn't have a simple binary answer, right? Mm-hmm. A formational question presumes that the person is on a journey and you're coming alongside to ask something that might help them continue on that journey.
Yeah.
Right. So at their best, spiritual formation questions will take you deeper.
they allow enough space for the person to do inner searching, right? To explore inside themselves with God, the Spirit helping them to discern. And so I don't know if that's an exact definition, but I think I've given us some little handholds and descriptive ways of understanding what one is. So what I wanted to do instead of just give you that is I'm going to give you actually some examples so you can hear the difference. And I think this is important for us in this conversation because we're not all spiritual directors. I get that. But in our lives and our work and even with our family and friends, wouldn't it be nice if we were more like coach-like or more spiritual direction-ish with people as opposed to, well, you know what you got to do? You just got to, the people.
Right.
Nobody.
Absolutely.
What if we could all learn just to ask really good questions and respect and honor the other person? I think that's a really big little side note on this. Do we believe in honor and respect in the other person's journey? Right. And do we believe that God actually is the one bringing about transformation? Okay. That's the heartbeat of a spiritual director. But that's sort of the engine of a formational question. Right. So here are some questions. These questions are fine. They're not wrong necessarily. It's just that you'll hear them. They sound like a little bit just like choppy. So like, what is God calling you to do? When does he want this to happen? Where does he want you to live this out? Why does he want you to do this? And how does he want you to pull this off? I mean, if you take each one of those questions individually, they're not horrible. But if you hear them in a row, don't they sound like a little pressuring?
Yeah, very pressuring.
Do you feel that?
My performance side starts to come out. I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's do this.
Yes. What are you going to do? And how is it going to happen? And how are you going to live this out? And what's God going to do? It's like, okay, we'll figure it out. I don't know. Again, these are perfectly fine questions, but we're talking today about formational questions.
Yeah.
So here's another way to ask some of these questions and see if you notice a change in tone. Who are the people in your life these days? Right? How might God be inviting you to serve them? Isn't that a different tone?
Oh, yeah.
Right? What might God be inviting you to do? You notice the word invite. I love the word invite. I won't lie. And when you're pondering what God is inviting you to do, be sure to include your own giftedness and your own wiring. When might you take your next discerned step? Another question. How might you lean on God's energizing power as you move forward? So notice these formational questions actually include God's grace, God's presence. You're going to assume that they're going to look to God for help in whatever it is. And you're using gracious words like invitation. So that's the difference. We're not trying to force. I think the thing is we're not trying to force a direction.
Right.
And we're not making assumptions about what the other person needs to do. Now that's hard, I know, because we all have opinions about what other people should be doing. Right. But does that give a little bit of a primer?
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's part of what I love about formational questions is like what you said, there's an invitation. It's very invitational. You can feel it. And it's in the way the language is being spoken. It's in the words that are being used. It is in the tone that is being used. And it's with the posture that's being used. There's an underlying sense of curiosity and of hope and opening the door into like a dreamland. Like you're really inviting that person to come in and to dream a little bit, which I think it's harder, in life to do. And so just to be able to have like that to me gives me an opportunity to, like you said, go deeper and literally to dream like, well, what might be God's invitation opposed to, am I responding to an invitation from him or am I responding to an expectation of other people? And that's when that performance part of me starts to really get heightened because I need to meet others' expectations. I need an A. I need to get an A on the exam.
Right.
And that may not be what he's inviting me to. And it does speak a lot about the relationship between us and God, I think, as well. that he's not a taskmaster.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
When there's an invitation. Yeah.
That's such, I think if any of you have been tracking, especially those of you in Replenish who go way back, we went through my book, What Does Your Soul Love? And inside of that, there are words we call process words, like with and unfolding and grace and let go and mystery, words like that. And those are great to start writing down when you have ideas, words that elicit grace and words that elicit process, and see if you can just work them into your conversation, even with yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Or if you're talking to other people.
Oh, yeah. I will say, and then we'll go on to the next question I have, but I will definitely say, I love how you were talking about incorporating this language and this posture. And I say both because you can have the language, but not the posture.
It is so true. Yes. That's there's a way, you talk about the Jesus way.
Yeah.
There's a Jesus message. Mm-hmm. Jesus had a way.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes we miss that.
Oh, yeah. We definitely can. Yeah. But I love how you were saying that what would that look like if we engaged in that with the people around us, in our relationships, with our families, at work. And I have seen such a difference when I am operating out of that space, when I'm having a conversation with a family member or with a friend, or especially when the topic maybe is a little tender, and I step into that different space of more formational and wonderment, it tends to kind of take out some of the tension that's there, because now we are both able to know, we really truly want to hear and to see each other. And it reminds me to stay in a place to keep striving to hear and to see that person, this other soul that is standing in front of me. So I love that you took it there too, that we can use this with those around us, our family members at work, all of that.
Oh, well, that's, not all of us are therapists or spiritual directors or coaches. We're also educators.
Yes.
We work in businesses, and most of us have friends and family of some sort. Right. And I've been this week in my coaching groups, my soul care groups, actually, the conversation was circling around the idea of control. And we discerned together that it isn't healthy for anyone for us to try to control other people. Duh.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody likes to be controlled. It's not our best move. And being a person who knows how to ask a formational question can help you practically continue to maybe engage others, but not in a way where they feel manipulated.
Okay. So moving forward, each of us, between you and Larissa and myself, we have other directors and coaches that hold space for us, which I think is important for people to know, that as we're holding space for other people, we have those who are holding space for us as well. And they ask us formational questions as well. So as we're asking them, we are allowing ourselves to be asked these questions. So wanted to ask you, how has that been beneficial for you personally? And can you recall maybe a particular formational question that you were asked that really impacted you in a deep way?
Yeah. I'm going to give you my specific answer to that question in just a sec, but I want to stop off first at a question that I think is a great question in general for all of us, especially as I talk to women. I ask this question a lot because it's classic, and often it sends women off. They have to look off and think, because it's not on the surface for us. And the question is, what do you really want?
Oh, gosh.
Right. I mean, it's classic. It's Ignatian Spirituality 101.
Uh-huh.
But that is a question that could be asked at any point in time. It will take you, if you allow it, it'll take you a few levels down beneath, what do you want? Well, I'd like to have a pizza right now. No. That's not what I'm talking about. What do you really want? Mm-hmm. I love that as a question that is beneficial, and I turn to it myself. What am I really looking for here? Especially if you're in a dialogue with someone, it's not going well, and you realize all of a sudden that you are trying to get something from somebody and it's not going to happen. What do I really want? Oh, I see. I was looking for some affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I've done this with my husband so many times, and he knows how to do it too. So we'll stop in the middle of whatever it is and we go, you know what? I realize actually right now, I just need you to affirm something.
Yeah.
Or, I'm really afraid right now. And I think that's coming out in whatever this is I'm saying. So what I really want, or what I really need, is maybe just some grace here, and some remembering that I'm going to be okay. I'm actually going to be okay. So what do you really want is a beautiful question. That's in general. Specifically for me, very recently, my spiritual director asked me a great question. I've been talking with him over the last year about, I'm turning 60. I keep talking about this because it's a big deal to me, but I've been processing that with him for about the last year, here and there throughout our conversation. And in one of those conversations, he asked me this question. He asked me, what is the quality of life that I want in my 60s? Now, do you hear under the surface of that question again is, what do you want?
Right.
What do you want? And this matters. Yeah. And I think it's good to pause even on that question one more time and to say this. Some of us have grown up and continue on in decades of not believing that what we want matters. Or for whatever reason, we're not in touch with our desires and needs. We put other people first so much that we haven't even given ourselves a second thought.
Yeah.
But our desires are actually God-given, our actual desires, right? Those deep, soulful ones, they're God-given, and they speak very much about who He's made us to be. So you can move out into your life fruitfully from your own God-given desires. That's why it's important to ask yourself what you want. Because then you don't have to go, well, what's my goal this year? I don't know. Find out what you want.
Yeah.
And a goal would emerge from that because it's given by God. So he asked me, what was the quality of life I want in my 60s? And 4 words emerged from me pretty quickly. I was kind of surprised. And they were, I want to be free. I want my life to be meaningful. I want it to be fruitful. And I want to be rested. And I loved that he asked me that question.
Yeah.
What is the quality of life I want in my 60s? That is a beautiful, formational, open-ended, gracious question.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you're absolutely right. For us as women, though, that can be a very challenging question because generally speaking, we're the caregivers, right? We're the nurturers. And I'm generalizing here. So it's just it can be a little bit more challenging for us to go there. And then I would even say just in our faith, the way that we are formed is that it's about others, right? It's about putting self last and it's about others. So I know that it can be really challenging for a lot of us to ask ourselves the question, what do I really want? Because it can feel really selfish. But you're absolutely right. If we get to the core of it, these desires, like as we're walking with Christ and we're being formed by Him, these are His desires too. And it's an invitation when we're asking ourselves, what do I really want? To allow that to actually be given a breath of life, to bring that to the surface. And so I think that's a beautiful, beautiful question to be able to ask. And like you said, you're coming into turning 60 soon. Ladies listening to this, starting out the new year, asking that question for this year, this season of life. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful approach. I think for me, a question that was like, there's been quite a few, but one that was coming to the surface for me recently was, kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, but what would that do for me was the question. What would that do for me? So if this happened, if I got this, or I was able to do this, what would that do for me? And the way that challenged me was because I'm how I am wired, my personality type, it's very much about what would that do for other people, right? How is that going to be a help to other people? And which sounds all beautiful and spiritual, right? But there's a dark side to that where it's always about everybody else. So for me to look at what would that do for me was way more challenging for me to look at and to be able to receive that as a gift from God. So now, how about when you're processing on your own? We talked a little bit about you sitting with a spiritual director and what about when you're just on your own? How do you know what questions to ask yourself when you're just doing your own processing on your own?
I've said before that I think a question can actually be a prayer. It's something that you're pondering with God. In this spiritual life that we're living, there is never a time when we're not with God. And so to just bring that up to the front. If you're asking a question, it could just be a prayer. So I remember that any question I ask can be a prayer and I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember again that kindness and grace are the best fuel and that curiosity leads the way. I like to ask questions that I can actually hold in my heart. So they're usually short. I mean, that's just practical.
Right.
And again, they're understandable. They're usually something I desire and I leave them open-ended. And then the key, I'm going to give you some examples here in a minute. And the key is once you've asked the question, Rilke, the poet, talked about living the questions. He says, you can't, there's this beautiful poem. I could probably look it up and read it to us here.
Wow.
But basically he's saying, the paraphrase is, you're asking questions and you want answers, but this is the thing. You probably couldn't even handle the answer if you got it. So he said, the key right now is to live the question. And I just think it's genius because isn't that kind of what we're doing when we're praying? We're asking God a question, then we're waiting. Yeah. We're living into it. Right. So it's open-ended. So for example, here's a couple of questions that I've actually asked myself and then I've held for either months or years. And then I journaled whenever I thought God was giving me something that had something to do with that. So, for example, again, referring back to the book, What Is Your Soul Love? The 8 questions that are in there, those were the answers to a question I asked. And the answers showed up over the next handful of years. And I just was journaling them and that they became the backbone of the book.
Wow.
So the question I asked was, and this, you guys are going to, what does this even mean? The question was, how did I get here? So that's a very short and brief question. But what I meant was, how did I get here? Like, I don't know, I was in my 40s, maybe late 40s, and I was liked who I was at the time. I was in one of those moments where you're kind of up on the plateau a little bit, looking out at the vista. You know how seasons ebb and flow. I was like, I had been through some therapy. I liked who I was. There, I had seen some fruit. And I was just asking God, how did this happen? How did I get here? And I held that question for years. And I just kept watching and I'm giving you, again, these are paraphrases. You know how when you're sharing a story, it's different than the experience of it. But it was as though every once in a while, I felt like God was just dropping something into my consciousness, or before I was reading something or someone said something or an insight came. And I felt like God was saying, that insight, that's one of those ways you got here. Right. Here, that's another. And so I went to the same place and I just kept writing down the list, which is how we were able to use it as the spine for the book. So this is so practical. I mean, I'm just a regular woman living an everyday life. One day I was curious about my own formational process and I asked God a question. How did I get here? And then this is the key to everything I've just said to now is then you have to be open to listen for any kind of response.
Right.
And take note of it.
Right.
So see the process?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. That question though, how did I get here? And then that quote, live the question.
Yeah. I'll look it up.
Yes.
Yeah, I will look it up and read it to us now. It's pretty famous. I'm looking it up as we speak right here.
Live the question. I think that's brilliant because
let me see if I've got it here.
You see this, ladies?
Okay.
This is happening real time. The inspiration.
I know. I think this is how he does it. Rilke is writing to someone and he says, I want to beg you as much as I can, dear sir, to be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. So he said, live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Isn't that profound?
That's so, oh yes. We are including that. We will link it, something.
Maybe we can put it in. It's a famous quote, but he said, don't seek the answers which can't be given you because you would not be able to live them. I like the fact that he's focusing on the fact that you're living a life.
Right.
And answers alone aren't always just the best.
No.
Right? Like just getting an answer. And then you're like, so what? Now what do I do?
Right. Exactly.
What are we going to do about this? How are we going to live this way? And so he's definitely talking about allowing process.
Right. Because we're thinking almost as if all is going to be solved by getting the answer, but the answer is not necessarily going to solve everything if we've skipped the journey of the question.
Right. And because we talk here about becoming. So what if you have the answer? That's great. Now you have the answer. There's nothing wrong with an answer.
Right.
But growth, process, being formed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The change, living it out is so important, especially in this culture right now. Oh my goodness. If all we have is answers, that is not going to be of service to what's happening right now.
No.
We've got to be a kind of person.
Yep.
Don't you think?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And the other thing about living the question, and then like what you said, that you keep the questions short, like that, and you said in a way that you can carry it with you. It's compact enough that you can travel with it.
Yeah.
And what that tells me is that you want to make sure you keep engaging that question. And if it's like when we've gone traveling, and you and I have talked about this, especially this past summer, we were committed to just doing carry-on. We didn't want the big, right? We were so committed to the process of, we're just going to do these trips with just our carry-on. We wanted to be light. We wanted to be free. We wanted to be able to really enjoy the journey, right? And so I think that is also the power of having questions that are smaller, they're more concise, and we can travel with them. And the other part of that is, if I'm continually engaging the question, I will be a little bit more apt to seeing the different responses throughout life. So like you said, whenever something would come to the surface, you would start to journal it. But you have to keep asking yourselves this question, because if not, life just takes over and it fills in all the crevices, all the spaces. And so a response may come and you totally missed it, and because you just haven't re-engaged the question again.
Well, there's something to say about that too. Maybe there's an unhurried aspect to this. Okay.
Yeah.
So what if you were only carrying one question for a whole year? What if it was 2 years? Now, there might be other little mini questions that rise up, but what if this was an important question to me. And so it was like a meta question.
Yeah.
And I had the space to hold it in a day. And I wasn't thinking about it every moment of every day. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But but you know what I mean? Don't you guys have that place inside yourself where you hold things? I was holding it there. And so an unhurried heart and soul allows that there might be a question you ask and you hold it for 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. And that's okay because it's probably really important.
Yeah.
Right. The other question I asked, this is from the beginning of What Is Your Soul Of? I said to God, I need a new way to live and work. Now, that wasn't a question. That was a statement. But implicit in that idea was show me
what this new way could be. Yes.
Is there a new way?
Yeah.
So show me a new way to live and work. Very concise little sentence. And then I was holding it. And I was waiting for God to show me any answer on any given date. Just, there's like some sort of antenna somewhere up watching. And then again, I'm not a big journaler. Like Alan is this major journaler. Like he's got millions and millions of words. When I'm done with my typed journal every year, it's usually less than 100 pages. And he's got thousands, tens of thousands of pages. So when I say journaling, I'm not just sitting around journaling. I journal what's important to me. So when I say I'm journaling it, I don't want you to think I'm just journaling my whole life. But I write down the things that are really important to me that I don't want to forget. And especially when I reflect and I see what God has done.
Yeah.
All of that stuff hits my journal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ladies, hopefully you got to, you heard a little bit of that piece right there. Jem does not sit around journaling all the time. It's okay if you don't have thousands of pages. She also mentioned typed. So if you're not sitting there doing pen to paper and it's on your computer or something digital, that is okay too. I heard those things and I want to make sure because there's a certain, standard sometimes that we put on ourselves for journaling. And it's okay if you don't have thousands of pages. And if you do, that's great too.
Either way. And this little thing that we keep with us all the time, I open my notes app all the time. And if I'm driving in the car or taking a walk, I dump whatever is all these little snippets I'm telling you, they come and they go in there. And then I'll go back and I date them and I put them in my journal. I bring them together. This is another unhurried practice. And it's the big word reflection. I'm going to talk about this at some point somewhere, but reflection is just critical to our life of growth. If you're not reflecting, I would go so far as to say you're not living fully. Because reflection upon what has occurred is a major way you find God's grace. You learn to discern, right? You learn how to craft the narrative of God's hand in your life. And then you take all that, because I'm saying this is the past, because reflection is about looking back, right? But you bring what happened back there to here. And now you can take it forward. And that makes you wise.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So if you're a person who reflects, you have a really good shot of becoming a person who is wise.
Yes. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, this has been amazing. I want to kind of take us through a few questions right now, take us through a little bit of a reflection time. And ladies, as I take Jem through this, would love for you to take the journey with us. This is going to be a very condensed, revised version, just for the sake of time. I would definitely encourage you ladies to take a little bit more time in doing this. And if you want to actually track with us, then I would say hit the pause button. And I'll give you that reminder when that time comes. But we're just going to give a really abbreviated amount of time. And so just to give you an overlay of what we're going to be doing, I'm just going to take Jem through just a little bit of a centering. I'm going to invite her into a safe space with the Lord as she enters into these questions. And then there's going to be 3 different questions I'm going to ask her. And in those pauses after she's reflected on that question, we're going to just come back and reflect on how is she doing? How is her body responding to this? What emotions, what thoughts? And the reason behind that is if there's a question that you are reflecting on, it's a formational question, it's also good to pay attention to how are you responding? Was it triggering in any way? Did it bring up any sensations in your body or your emotions, any thought patterns? And to really like stick with the Lord when it comes to what's happening in that before you go on to the next question. Because by just moving on to the next question, you could be carrying over something that the Lord is wanting to process with you before you go to that next question. It's not necessarily about finishing the whole practice. It's about allowing this practice to bring you into a connection with God. And when that happens, I always encourage people, stop, stay in that space until he gives you the green light to take that next step forward. So what we're going to do is, Jem, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to close your eyes. And we're just going to take a nice deep breath in and release. Just allow your body to relax and to sink a little deeper into the space that you're sitting. I want to encourage you to go into a space with the Lord that you feel is safe for you, that you could have this conversation with yourself and with Him. It should be a place that doesn't hold any sort of judgment or need to perform, whatever that would look like in your imagination. And when you're in that space, I want to invite you to look around that space that you're in. Take in the colors and the textures. Just get really settled in there. Now, ladies, if you need more time to find the space or to settle in, I want to encourage you to hit pause. And when you're ready, you can come back. And now, Jem, this first question I want to invite you to reflect on is, what is your desire for God? You're asking yourself, the question would be, what is my desire for God? I'm just going to give you a brief moment to consider that. Now let's go back to that safe space that you were in. And again, ladies, if you need more time to process, go ahead and hit that pause button and come back when you're ready. Let's go back to that safe space you were in with the Lord. And I want to draw your attention to your body. You were engaging that question. Were there any sensations that you felt on your body? And just bring awareness to it. And maybe you know where that's coming from, or maybe you don't. But invite God into that space right. And then draw your attention to your emotions. What emotions did that engaging that question provoke for you? And remember, you are not your emotions, you are experiencing your emotion. And invite God into that space. And now engage your thought patterns. Were there any words or old thought patterns, narratives that started to run through your mind when you engaged that question? You don't need to judge it as good or bad, just bringing awareness to it and invite God into that space as well. Now we're going to go to our second question. And the second one is, what is God's desire for me? You've asked what your desire is for God. Now you're asking, what is God's desire for you? And I'll give you a moment here. Let's go back to our space with God. Again, ladies, feel free to hit the pause button. And let's re-engage our body. Were there any sensations that came to the surface? And invite God into that space. Engage your emotions. Were there any emotions that were provoked? Invite God in. And now engage your thoughts. What was the narrative, the storyline that started to run through your mind? And invite God in. Now we move to our last question. What are the hindrances or resistance points or blocks that are coming when you consider your desire for God and God's desire for you? What hindrances are there? And I'll give you a moment here. Okay, let's come back to our space with God. Just check in on your body, your emotions, your thoughts. Invite God into those spaces. Look around the space that you are in with Him. It is safe, that He is embracing you. He welcomes conversation with you. He wants to dream with you. We take a nice deep breath in and we release. And And we close, God, with just a knowing that these are open-ended questions and that we do want to embrace the living of these questions. So we thank you for what awareness has come in this moment. And we thank you for what awareness will come in the moments that are still to come. We surrender and we trust you. In Jesus' name. Hey,
That was
so
good.
how was that for you?
Yeah, I liked it. It was I know we went through it kind of quickly, so I was rushing to get my answers.
I know.
But again, we can pause as we're going back over this again. But I think generally what happened to me, if I look down at what I've written here, there was a sense of God expanding. I'm always asking God to break down any preconceived ideas I have or walls or, how, because God is big. And I'm like, show me more, show me more. So I have a sense of that, my desire for God is that I more. What does that mean? Sometimes I'm afraid to ask for that because I, don't know what that means. But, and then as far as me, then I feel like I kind of get right sized. I get smaller. And that feels comforting. That combination of allowing myself to sense the expansiveness of God. Because usually what happens is I have an expansive sense of myself, making my way through my day. But if he expands and then I get right sized, it just feels better. It feels more relaxed. It feels like I could have more peace if I wanted to. I don't have to be anxious or striving for things or making something happen.
Right.
So that's the gist of sort of what came up. The resistance pieces were, of course, anxiety, impatience, and envy. But those things block, my desire to enjoy each day or to experience God as bigger. And so I liked this exercise because it allowed me to think about God. It allowed me to think about me. It allowed me to think about what things are in the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually did a form of this while I was driving yesterday. And so I didn't ask necessarily exact words, and I'm just sharing it just to show that we can take a practice and we can make it our own depending on what's happening, what our situation is. But there's a lot that's going on for our family. Especially this week, there's a lot of change, potential change, and I really have been feeling, anxiety really just coming at me really hard. And I was driving and I was actually starting to feel really sick to my stomach. And I just started engaging these types of questions about what is my desire for God in this? And what is his desire for me? What is the truth, And what are the hindrances? And some of the hindrances were, I want all the answers and I want to be able to control the outcome and I want to control the journey. I'm realizing I want all control. And then saying, and I'm going to release that control and help me to release that control. Yeah. I was really trying to carry the both and that as much as this is my desire, there's a flesh part of me that is saying, no, I know better, and saying, no, I may not know better. So we can definitely sit with this in a very reflective, longer way, or we can take this on the way as well. Yeah. So based on our conversation today, is there maybe one simple or practical step you'd want to encourage our ladies to take going forward? What might be just the next step on their journey?
Well, I think referring back to the Rilke quote that I shared, grow to love the questions.
I love that.
Right? Love the questions. Live the question. Whatever that means to you. And with that, that means you don't have to have the answers right away. I've already confessed to you that I've held questions for years. And I think a good question is a prayer. I treat them as prayers. I ask God things. And it's not like, intercession or like this white knuckled thing. It's just, how did I get here? Boy, Lord, I sure need a new way forward. Can you show me what that is? Do you see how it's just so real and practical? It's my life. And then I watch for the answer. So it's really the holding and the living of the question. So grow accustomed to being a little patient, maybe.
Yeah, there's that word we love. We love it.
I know.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jem. Such a fun conversation. I know that we could go on and on and on. I love being able to talk with you, and love that we were able to engage this conversation. Ladies, I'm really hoping that this was a blessing to you. Our prayers are going with each of you as we enter into this new year, and that we would make that part of our journey for each and every one of us, that we would embrace living the question and walking at the pace of grace and of patience. And that is our blessing over you and over ourselves. So until next time, everyone, we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful month.
Thank you for joining me on the Unhurried Living Podcast. You'll find many helpful links in the show notes so you can get to know us better, as well as our partner Life Audio and all of their other faith-centered podcasts. Remember, you're making your way forward one small, simple, and gracious step at a time.